Hello, hello, and happy Wednesday, everyone. Um, I am, I've been away for a little bit. I've been away from this for a little bit. I've had some work that's been keeping me busy in the background, but I'm very happy to be back today with this opportunity to chat with a colleague and talk about a topic that I think uh, both of us find have been important for us. So I'm Greta Lax. I am a coach, consultant who for Greta Lax LLC. My background's industrial organizational psychology, and I primarily do DEI and intercultural development work, which is kind of a lens to all the work that I do. And I am very happy to be here today and welcome Jackie Broussard of Jackie Broussard Consulting. Jackie and I have met through a community of practice, and that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. What are communities of practice, how they've been beneficial for us, and a little bit more learning just about kind of Jackie and what she's got coming up for her in her work. So I am gonna turn it over to you, Jackie, to give you a moment to introduce yourself and share anything that you would like the audience to know coming into our conversation. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Greta. Yeah, I'm happy to be here talking about communities of practice. And just a little bit about me. I'm a nomad, I'm an avid reader, a tennis player, and I'm a strategist. And in the work that I do, I help organizations to leverage multicultural, multiracial, multi-generational workforces to create and build high performing and innovative teams. And a lot of that is, like you said, through intercultural work. And yeah, so that's a little bit about what I do.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm so glad. Just like a lot of things out, I've found some of the fantastic people that I've had the opportunity to meet through LinkedIn and through some of these communities that's originally how I connected, at least with our community of practice, was here through LinkedIn. And just some of the other folks that I've had the opportunity to meet, right? Other professionals in the field. It's just really been such an incredible opportunity, right? To have this, to have folks who know and kind of understand the work and may bring, a variety of different perspectives and experience, and just the ability to have, to be able to talk to other folks who are doing this and living and eating and breathing this kind of every day, and really using that opportunity to kind of support one another, to learn from one another. Yeah, I've really appreciated that LinkedIn brings that opportunity. It has brought that opportunity. And I'm really have been excited to have the opportunity to participate in a couple of different communities of practice. So I think for a lot of, communities practice can look a lot of different ways. But for me, right, it's a gathering place for people around a common practice, around a common, whether it's a profession or an aspect of the profession, and to be able to share and learn and grow together around that particular topic. So Jackie, do you want to talk a little bit about the community of practice of where we met and how, and that community in and of itself?
Yeah, well, first I just wanted to say, thank you for bringing up the point that LinkedIn is a community of practice. I hadn't really thought about it as such, but it is. Um, and and just kind of, I love your definition. I found a definition that says communities of practice are groups of people who share a concern or passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. And that essentially is kind of what they are. And I had known about communities of practice before and had always like recommended and suggested to my clients that they form communities of practice within their workplaces and with their colleagues. But I had never actually been a part of one formally until about the spring of 2023. And that's when I attended a webinar put on by IDI, Intercultural Development Inventory, by Mafalda Arias. And so that's when I kind of learned a little bit more about like, what is this really? And like, how do we do it? And a group of the participants from that webinar actually decided to form a community of practice for the Midwest. So folks who were practitioners in the Midwest. And so that was my first formal community of practice. Fast forward to be honest, I don't actually know when the community of practice that we are part of together started. I think maybe earlier this year. Is that right?
That's funny. I'm actually in a couple of them, so I'm not. It may have been, end of last year, beginning of this year. So it had this
Yeah.
particular one. I don't think it's been going for all that
Yeah.
long. But, yeah.
Yeah, and so it is basically qualified administrators of the IDI, and it's being hosted and facilitated by Kai Stowers, and we basically just kind of get together once a month and talk about, you know, challenges we are having, and each month someone different hosts the meeting in terms of like what the topic is going to be, and they'll bring forward, you know, some basic information about the topic, and it's typically a topic that that person is having a challenge with. So you're not at all expected to be an expert, but just kind of do a little bit of research to bring to the group, and then open it up to the group for like support, ideas, strategies, etc. with that particular thing. So yeah, that's where we met.
Yeah, I really appreciated that one. For those who may not be familiar with the IDI or the Intercultural Development Inventory, the IDI is a tool that allows us. It's an online instrument, and for those folks who go through the process and become qualified administrators, we are able to use that, the online assessment, to determine where folks are mindset wise on a developmental continuum in terms of going from a very monocultural mindset, where we really only see the world through one particular lens, to a multicultural mindset, and where kind of folks are along that path, including where folks see themselves on that kind of developmental. Sorry, the word's escaping me right now, Jackie.
Continuum.
Yeah, thank you. The continuum, where they see themselves on the continuum, and where other folks are likely to see them on the continuum. So we get that, that unique opportunity that a lot of instruments don't have built into them, to be able to see the difference between where we think we are, and where others may perceive us, and kind of be able to look at what that gap is, right? And get that kind of feedback that we're so often missing. To kind of hold that mirror up, help us see where our current strengths are, where the opportunities for growth might be, and then help people go from there. So the community practice we're in is all about that. What does that look like? So continuing to develop our own practices in terms of using that instrument. Dealing with questions that come up. A lot of us use it very differently. So in this particular community of practice, right, we have folks who are internal to an organization and use the tool that way. There are those of us who are external consultants and use it as, a piece of a lot of the larger work that we do. But right, that chance to come together and talk about, okay, here's a particular instance. whether it's, kind of troubleshooting together and saying, okay, well, this is a situation that came up. How do we begin to handle this? Or just kind of a general, sometimes a more general conversation comes up in terms of, hey, I haven't seen this in the literature, and this is one of the questions that I have, and then just kind of playing around with the ideas as folks who are at different stages of their practice in terms of using this particular instrument, being able to give, share perspectives, share experiences, and kind of build from there. I know that I think I've been at this particular instrument, I think I've been qualified since 2017, 2018. And so I've been using it in a variety of different environments. But just to be able to have that group to come back to, because people use it so differently, right? People use it for different purposes with different types of groups, and different questions come up, different areas come up. That it's been really powerful. For me, it's been a really powerful tool, right? Just in terms of being able to, see how other people are using it. What are other people doing? And then being able to, like I said, share from our perspective, from our lens, from our experience, and help one another grow. Is this, Jackie, is this the only community of practice or COP that you are I think you said that you're a part of right now?
So currently, so the one that I talked about, that was my first one.
Oh, that's right.
It dismantled, I think, for a variety of reasons, but then I started one recently, which, like, in the past, I guess, 4 months or so, and it really just started because I put a post out on LinkedIn saying, entrepreneurship is hard, and I'm just feeling like really alone, specifically in, like, I'm feeling lost in terms of, like, outreach, like client outreach and sales, and that kind of thing, and, like, how do you put yourself out there to more potential clients, and what works, and that kind of thing. And um, and so I just put out a post saying, like, is anybody else, like, struggling with this? And so there were several folks who replied and were like, yeah, and I would love to, like, talk more about it, and, like, share together, on those struggles. And so I formed one, which is, I call it an outreach community of practice, but it basically is like how, entrepreneurs, business owners, kind of talking about, yeah, how to get their work out there, and build their businesses.
Oh, I love that. I didn't even know about that. I don't think that came up in our
Oh,
conversations yet. That's cool.
okay, so I'm definitely sending you the invite after this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
And I don't know how open that is. I mean, that's kind of one of the things about
it is.
community of practice, right? Is kind of trying to figure out what's that sweet spot for a number of folks involved, kind of depending on the topic, depending on the time you
Yeah,
have, and depending on the commitment, the time commitment, right? Because the bigger the
right.
group, the more there can be to manage. And I
Yeah, and
also,
I was just going to say, it's an open group, and so anyone can join. We have started out because the folks, when we first started, they really wanted to do every 2 weeks because they wanted to keep themselves accountable.
wow.
Um, and we did that, and we're still doing that. But what I'm finding is, like, maybe once every month might be a better cadence, just because every 2 weeks requires, we're a pretty small group right now. So then it requires, people to kind of take the helm more often. And so we may end up moving to monthly, but that hadn't been determined yet.
I love that. That's so many of the questions that come up when you're either considering starting a community practice or trying to maintain one, right? Is what is the appropriate cadence for that particular group, for who's around the table, and how that can change over time. And then, and even kind of figuring out what that specific purpose is. I love, it's something similar when I was just starting off, just starting off in my own business, and it was really invaluable to be able to connect with folks. I think there was a little bit of a disconnect. Like I connected with a group of folks who were much further along than I was. So I really felt like I was, like I had started after everybody had already, everybody was all 5 miles ahead of where I was.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
sometimes it's kind of figuring out what that fit is. But once, you get in and get a chance to kind of, get a sense of where folks are and figure out what that fit is, I've found them to be really useful, in this sense. Around this particular tool, really helping to continue to stay in touch and developing and learning about that. The entrepreneurship piece, I love that. I've done that. So kind of, where we are in terms of stage of development. And then I've also been parts of community of practice that were really about continuing the learning after a particular learning experience. We talk so much about transfer, and how, we may sit through a training or do a learning session or whatever. How do we make sure that we're taking that and applying it outside of? So it's a little bit of what we're doing with the IDI community that Kai has started and has helped keep going, or has kept going. But even, kind of more targeted, smaller group that says, okay, here are the things that we learned. How do we keep ourselves motivated, and how do we keep ensuring that we're coming back to that? And we kind of did the same thing, coming out of a new learning experience. Like we started every 2 weeks and we were meeting and talking and setting goals and those kinds of things. And then as we got a bit more settled, kind of stepped back a little bit and adjusted to kind of that once a month cadence similarly.
Maybe when folks start out, they're just very ambitious, and they get a little bit more realistic with time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and different stages, I think, too, right? So different, like when it's brand new and it's fresh in your mind and you want to make sure that you're jumping in, so I think, I've been parts of ones that have different, different schedules. And again, those schedules might change over time based on availability, but just kind of that availability too, to just, to drop in to a supportive community and to know that they're there, so that when that question comes up or that experience comes up, and some of those communities where, they stay in touch in between sessions or in between meetings, so that, there's a way that you can ask the group questions, that you can kind of throw things out there that have come up. I know, and in the group that Kai leads, there's been some pretty active email threads and stuff that have given folks a chance to reach out and ask some of those questions as they come up, and to have that group to come to has been really a really excellent resource that I know I've been really grateful for.
Oh yeah, like to your point about the communication in between sessions, I think that has been like some of just as rich, as the actual like live conversations that we have, because folks will kind of put something out there and say like, I have this client who's in, you know, polarization, and I'm not really sure. I'm going to do an individual debrief and kind of talk to them about their orientation, and here are some things I'm concerned about in entering that conversation, like to make it a productive one. What are your recommendations? That's just an example, but like, and then a flurry of folks will respond and like, here's a resource, and have you tried this, and this is this has worked for me. And I mean, I didn't even ask the question, and I learned so much, just in those back and forths. So yeah, I think it's really powerful in a lot of ways, and also in the way that you mentioned earlier, which is, sometimes you do have people who are at different levels of experience, within the group, which I think it's beautiful, right? Like I think it's really this sense of community, like we're bringing everyone up, and you know, maybe that person isn't necessarily going to be able to provide like all the expertise with relation to that specific topic, but they're learning, and as they're learning and growing, they're able to contribute more and more. And so I really love that about it too.
Yeah, and even though I mean in that particular one, for example, folks who might not have as much experience with that particular interest bring that whole lens of their experience outside of that to
Hmm.
it. So, whether that's folks who have experience in a particular industry, um, folks who've been closer to the training, which has been really interesting as somebody who gets further and further away from it,
Yeah,
right? To have those opportunities, like what did they what
right.
what did they say back in 2017 versus what are things looking like today? And so it has really been lovely to have that mixture of experiences, mixture of folks coming from different disciplines, folks coming from different lived experiences and different lenses, and everybody kind of having that place to to contribute and hopefully to be able to take something away as well and to learn from that experience. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, so, any, in this case, and we're really, the one that we met in is really focused on kind of that intercultural development continuum. Um, So I don't know if that's a chance. So we talked a little about communities of practice and the different types of communities. Oh, one of the things that I also meant to ask about or to mention is, have you done any in-person ones? Because I've seen, since the pandemic and since going to work for myself and doing so much remote work, that most of the communities of practice I've been a part of have been virtual. But
Hmm.
I know that there's also, similar kind of a variation on the networking group, that instead of just networking, it's also like a local community of practice where folks get together. Um, I haven't had that much. Well, actually, I'm part of a regional community of practice, but I'm outside the region. I was
Hmm.
adopted into the group,
Yeah.
so I'm only the virtual. But have you had that opportunity to do any kind of local, like a local version?
I wish. The answer is no, but I really am craving that, to be honest. Like now, with just like all of my work being virtual, more and more, I'm kind of craving that in person contact. So I don't know, but that's an idea though. Maybe it's something to get started in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's
Yeah.
also been really difficult for me because I'm a nomad. I mentioned earlier I'm a
Sure.
nomad, and so I move around quite a bit, and I'm like only in the town where I live a few months a year, and so that also has made it a little bit more difficult.
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. So the the silver linings, right, of being able to connect virtually is that no matter where you are, folks can kind of
Yeah.
tap in, and yeah, how do we balance that and have the opportunity to connect with folks all over and get a variety of different experiences from a variety of different places. And yeah, I like I've been kind of looking for that myself, is to have
Mhm.
that local connection too, where you can just sit down around coffee with the folks again,
Yeah,
or a
definitely.
meal, um, and kind of yeah, just be in the same room. And yeah, I'm looking a little bit more of that. I feel
Yeah,
like these days too, but I'm also extremely grateful for these opportunities to connect with folks virtually, and kind of to stay out of that, um, not to stay out of it, but to have that balance, right, between kind of that local bubble, as opposed to
hmm,
the broader view that we
yeah,
get from being able to include folks from all over, from all different
yeah,
experiences.
definitely.
Any thoughts on, kind of, since our group is really focused around the IDC and the intercultural development continuum, how is that? How are you using that in the work that you do?
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I think intercultural development is really so crucial because it's really all about self-awareness, right? I like to think of like you can't introduce yourself to someone without knowing your own name, you know? And so intercultural development is like, yeah, learning who you are. And so it's work that I think is kind of at the heart of any efforts to make to create healthy cultures within the workplace. And I see a lot of organizations trying to enter into like really um, difficult conversations without having done that work first. And and one of two things usually happens. It's either you that the conversations just fall flat and they don't really go anywhere, or that space becomes more polarized, even more so than it was before. And so again, it's like about creating like a common language that we can speak. Um, and so we need to develop that common framework and a common language before we start having conversations like this. And so I think, yeah, that's where intercultural development comes in, and why it's a really important part of what I do.
Gosh, I love that example that you gave about not being able to introduce yourself without first knowing your own name. Uh, I, similarly, I feel like, whether I'm doing, overall culture work within the organization, doing individual leader development work, DEI, to me most of it's kind of like inseparable, right? But to me this is like part of that foundational aspect of helping individuals and teams see where they are on this scale. And I think so much when we step into this work, people say you're talking about DEI work, I think so often people step into this work thinking we're going to start talking about other people immediately,
Yeah,
and this is how,
yeah,
and it kind of like flips the script on people and say, nope, we're going to start off with you. We're going to start off with figuring out where you are. We're going to start off with understanding your lens on the world and how that was developed, and how that impacts how you see and interact with and process, the world around you and the people in the world around you, before we start even beginning to think about other folks. And I think that's usually quite a surprise to folks. And I think it's a fantastic balance to, and part of that, larger conversation, and also talking about, what is the larger culture of the organization, particularly around psychological safety, and looking at these, bringing these like foundational components together so that we're creating an environment that's ready to do this work, that's more ready to be able to move forward with this work, and individuals who are more ready to dive in and do this work. And it's been just such a useful, and it's not always the starting point, right? Because sometimes I feel like I've got to start 10 steps before we get to, to even get to
yeah.
that. But really useful groundwork for helping ensure that all the work that comes after it has some place to stick and is more effective.
Yeah, and it's you. A lot of times it's not like, actually, it's very rare for a client to come to me and say, we want to do some intercultural development. Like they usually don't know that. They're usually starting with like, what is our big pain point right now? Like whether it's in like our hiring processes, like like we're not able to recruit a diverse applicant pool. What's the deal? Or we're having some internal conflict around X, Y, and Z, and so like they'll come to you for that, like help us fix that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, we're gonna get there, but first let's start here. Let's build some really strong foundation and frameworks first.
Yeah. Yes, I love that, and right, because how often are we brought in, and what we're told is the problem, or what we're told is the issue. It maybe is so often a symptom, right? Is so often a symptom of the larger issue.
Yes.
and being able to get in and do all of and do that, setting the stage with communicating with all the different players and trying and investigate and figure out when you have the opportunity to do so, right? Because you don't always have the opportunity to do so. And I think that's also the benefit of hearing from folks who are doing this internally, who like know the organization, or sometimes think that they know the organization and are asked to use this as a tool, or or it's built into their processes kind of long term in terms of new employees come in, leadership development processes, those kinds of things, as opposed to having to come from the outside and start with where people think they are, figure out where they really are, and help them move forward from there.
Yeah, right.
But I feel like these conversations have been really helpful in each one of those, areas. And I've got kind of different perspectives from the different groups that feed into that, whether it's a, DEI community of practice specifically, kind of a mix of the intercultural and DEI. And I love what you talked about just in terms of the developing as an entrepreneur, developing as a small business, and kind of figuring out that's a whole other that's a whole other learning curve when we dive in.
Yeah, that definitely, like, entrepreneurship definitely requires community of practice. Yeah, you need the support. I mean, in fact, like, the reason why this concept of community of practice appeals to me so much is because I think let's just say it's part of an overall personal growth project of mine that I've been on. I would say probably since my early 40s, and it all started because I just got sick of competing. I grew up, in a very competitive person, like it was all about like how well I did in school, what grades did I get? Did I get the highest score? You know, I needed to be like better than someone else to have that sense that like, okay, yeah, I'm worthy, and I always like wore that competitive person badge, like very proudly, like I'm a competitive person, um, up and through like when I was around 30, I mentioned I play tennis and I started playing tennis at age 30. And I went directly and I decided I wanted to do singles, no doubles, because I did not want to have to deal with someone else if they were having an off day, like if I win or if I lose, I want it all to be up to me, and that was just like, me for so many years, and it ended up being to where like winning was everything. Like, and when I would lose, and mind you, Greta, have never been a professional tennis player. I've never made any money doing this. But when I would lose, I just felt like such crap. Like I was just like, I don't know, it just had this like effect on my psyche, and I'm like, what is this about? you know and so that's when I started to, I think I carried that into my first business. I used to own a fitness business, and I was it was just like, this is my business. Like, this is the whole thing of being an entrepreneur. Like, you get to be the boss, and like you don't have to depend on anyone. And so I took that into that field, and it was like one day when a participant of one of my classes came to me and said, "Hey, do you would you be interested in organizing a Zumbathon?" Because I used to teach Zumba. And she's like, "Would you be interested in organizing a Zumbathon to benefit my kids' high school? They really need to raise funds for their programs." And so I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But really, that was the beginning of this whole thing, because what I realized in like organizing my first big event and collaborating with other instructors, and, as opposed to like competing against them, um, and kind of learning from each other and like, oh, that person does this. I should try that in my classes and that kind of thing. Like I had the most growth during that period of my business. And I said to myself, the next time I own the business, I was going to put collaboration and partnership at the forefront. And so this is kind of me fulfilling that promise to myself and reminding myself of that promise because you forget, you start to work in a silo as a business owner, and you forget that, like, hey, you're not in this alone. There are other people. Reach out, be vulnerable, get the support you need and give the support that others need. And so I think that's why this that's what's really driving me forward.
That that's really beautiful, Jackie. I really appreciate you sharing that and kind of bringing that aspect to it. I think there's so many things happening in the space that we work in these days that kind of raise that sense of competitiveness, when there's that scarcity, whether it's real or perceived scarcity of the work that's available, those kinds of things. But that ability to continue to recognize that each one of us has room for growth and expand, continuing to expand our lens, doing this work for 30 years, it doesn't matter, there's still so much out there for me to learn and grow and to benefit from others, and hopefully to give back some as well. And yeah, to be able to step outside and say, here are some of the ways that I can continue to learn and grow, but also that I can give something back too, and help others, along this journey and contribute. So, I have that image in my head, people, they talk about the crabs in a barrel kind of thing, where we're just trying to stomp over one another to get ahead. Whereas there's, so much beauty and benefit to our being able to lift up and support one another. This work is hard. um,
Mhm.
the environment that we're doing the work in is really hard. So to be able to pull together and support one another and continue to learn and grow and develop one another around the way um, has really been has really been a gift, I think, to me, and has helped me get through these last few years, kind of starting off, on starting my own business and getting my feet under me. So I've been very grateful for these communities and for folks like you, and to be able to connect and have these conversations and learn and grow from one another. Speaking of lifting one another up, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about what's coming up for you. Um, so kind of building on this experience and being able to have our conversation, I understand you're going to be having some conversations of your own. So I'd love to give you a chance to share a little bit more about what you've got coming up for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So, community of practice is going to be the theme of my LinkedIn Live series, and it is basically going to be me in conversation with colleagues, talking about, um, you know, not only like the things that we have a lot of experience and knowledge in, but also like the ways that we struggle or the challenges that we have. And and the idea is for it to be of service, these conversations to be of service or support to other practitioners, first of all, of the work that we're doing, but also um, just folks within organizations who want to move the needle on creating healthier cultures, within the workplace. And so it can be leaders, it can be employees of organizations that kind of want to get some ideas on how to do that. And so the audience is pretty broad. Even the themes will be fairly broad as well, because it won't just be about intercultural development. It won't just be intercultural or IDI practitioners, but a variety of folks that I'll be in conversation with who are using a lot of different tools and are in different fields to do this work. And it came about really just because, I've been having a lot of conversations lately with people, like new people who I haven't met before, or folks who, have been my colleagues for years and just kind of been reaching out to folks and, hey, let's catch up, let's have a conversation, or like, let's learn about more about each other's work. And it has been like it's just really filled my cup, because like just those conversations are just like made me feel like very warm. um and it's like learning more about folks and just having these really enriching conversations, and kind of like getting into the like intellectual side of things and also the practical side of things. And so, in our everyday lives, like we don't really make space for those kind of conversations, like generative ones where like we're trying to create something, like we have this vision, and we're trying to create it. And so how do we do that little by little, piece by piece, through these conversations? And so it's just really bringing those same conversations onto the public sphere, into the public sphere, so other people can benefit from them. Because I'm like, so many people could have benefited from just like listening to this conversation I had with someone last week, that, and so, that's kind of what it is. And, I think of it as courageous conversations, because I think you have to be courageous in order to make change, and and to um, and to create the future that you want to see. That takes courage, right? Because it's something that doesn't really exist right now. So how do we get there, and how do we take those first steps? And so I think we can start to do that through courageous conversations, which require vulnerability. And again, like the idea being like, we're not perfect, like we don't know it all. And but somebody else may know more about us in certain areas. And so, um, we're helping each other out and we're growing at the same time. Um, I think, vulnerability has been like a key word for me, in recent years as well, because it's like, you know, I think the strongest leaders, that are able to really move people are those who are able to be vulnerable. Because people are craving that, like people really are craving realness, you know, um, and they don't want to see like this picture perfect image of what a leader needs to be, and like, that kind of thing. They want to know about, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so, um, my hope is to um, push forward like some vulnerable conversations, to talk about, those things that like may not make us look like, the best and the biggest, but they're real, and they will help other people, to be able to relate to and say, hey, yeah, me too, you know. And thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so that's pretty much kind of what my series is going to be about, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And being able to bring forward that gift, right? That gift of authenticity, of sharing, like you said, that vulnerability, um, and being able to come from that place of self reflection, and humility and curiosity and all those things that we're, that's part of the work that we do, and trying to help instill in others, and really making sure that we're continuing to practice that as well. It sounds like a lovely gift to the community, Jackie. Is there, how would you describe the audience for your live series? So who should be tuning in? Who should be watching out for your live series to.
Yeah, well, practitioners that are, whether they're intercultural development practitioners, DEI practitioners, really, you know, folks within organizations, like I said, that are looking to create strong foundations, cultural foundations in their organization. So they may not necessarily be practitioners, but they just want to know, like, where do I start, and what are some ideas that can help me. So yeah.
I love that. And because, right, so often the change agents are, it can look so different who's wearing that hat of that change agent, whether it's somebody who's internal, somebody who's external, somebody who's leading from above, somebody who's leading from, beside folks. It can look so different. Sounds like a really great opportunity that you're presenting, a really great opportunity for folks to continue to listen and learn from a variety of different perspectives or a variety of different experiences and practice levels. I know I look forward to tuning in myself and hearing more from the folks that you're connected with. So if folks want to be sure to tune in, how can they find out more about your upcoming series?
Mhm. Yeah, basically, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So, Jackie Broussard is my name, how you can find me on LinkedIn. And I'll be posting about these different ideas. And also, I'll be posting, events up there to kind of, tell whenever the next one is gonna happen. But the first one is actually going to be, I have a date. It's August 28th, and it'll be around the same time. And I've invited my colleague who is, she and I used to, well, we still do actually. We are partners working together with the same client for the past 3 years.
Wow.
And the conversation is going to be called Anatomy of a Partnership. And so basically, we're just going to talk about, like, what it's been like partnering together, and what were some sticky points that we had in our partnership at any points. How did we get through those? What did we learn? Um, how did we grow the most from partnering together? Because partnerships do require another level of communication, and just kind of, thinking of the other person. Like, I can't just, like, fly off and do, whatever it is I want, without first, like, checking with my partner first. I'm like, what do you think about this? And like, exchanging ideas. So we've had our ups and downs in this partnership, um, but we have remained great friends. And so we just want to talk about what that's been like. So that'll be our first conversation, Anatomy of a Partnership, on August 28th. And I'm hoping that the next month to talk about how to use intercultural tools as a framework for navigating political conversations. With the election coming up, I felt like it would be like a timely topic. And so, yeah, that's just a couple of the upcoming types of things that we'll be talking about.
Oh, I love that. I'm okay. I'm looking forward to both of them. And I hope when we're done here, I know for anybody who's watching, Jackie is linked as a speaker here on LinkedIn, on the LinkedIn event. So you can follow her from clicking on that link there. Jackie, afterwards, I'll ask that you, once you do get the events up, if you, drop a link or put a note in the comments when we're done
Okay.
here. LinkedIn lets you do that. Let folks know the topics that are coming. Because I know I've seen folks kind of popping in and popping out. And a lot of times when we do these, folks don't always get a chance to come back and catch all of it later. But that'll give, anybody who is passing by a chance to peek in the comments and get a look at what you have coming up. I know, like I said, I'm looking forward to it myself. I'm excited. Is there Is there anything else? Is there anything that you're looking for, or that, any particular topics, beyond those two that you'd like to hear from folks about, or that you'd like to connect with folks about, or you pretty much have your schedule set for the
No, I
series?
do not have my schedule set, and I love come with ideas like in the comments. You let me know what you want to talk about, what you want to hear about. I think one thing that I'm really interested in lately a lot is AI and what role it's going to play. Like we're all asking this question, right? What role is it going to play in our work, in the future of work, and how does it like can it advance our objectives to create healthy cultures, or is it going to do the opposite? Like conversations around AI, like how it can help us as well. And so that's one of the things I'd love to talk about. So anybody who's like, you know, super nerding out on AI, shoot me a line in the comments. And so yeah, that's an example.
Oh gosh, I love that so much. I think I've been a part of a couple of other learning circles around AI and education in particular, because I do teach, part time online, teaching DEI, teaching, organizational development, um, and it's really fascinating the huge shifts that are happening there. For the folks who are um, trying to figure out how do we not just fight this tool, right? Because this is a culture change. This is such a huge shift for all of our, whether it's work cultures or culture in general, right? And figuring out how this huge evolution is going to impact us and how we can use it. And I agree. I'm wholeheartedly interested in how, knowing some of the inherent biases that exist that are in the culture, how that's fed into AI, and those biases are showing up in AI, and how do we look at how that impacts our work going forward? How is it a tool that we use? How do we address some of the challenges that exist? Okay, that's another conversation that I can't wait to hear more about.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because it's so like interesting to see people's reactions to it. It's like, there are a lot of folks who are just like fearful, like, oh my God, it's coming to get us, it's coming to take our jobs, like it's doomsday. And then there are other folks who are like super like, no, it's no, really positive about the changes that it can bring about. And then, of course, there's, a more curious person who's like, yeah, like it could be good, but like, also we have to, keep, we have to really be vigilant in how it's being used. Um, and so I just love like hearing people's reactions to just when you bring up the topic AI, how they react. I think it says a lot, So it'll be an interesting conversation.
Yes, yes. I remember I was on a car trip. I was on a 3-hour car trip, and I was listening to, because I've been really curious about it, myself. Both in terms of, like I said, how it's used in the classroom, but like how I can use that, to leverage, for within my own business, within my own practice. And I think the author's name, I think it's Ethan Malik, wrote a book on co-intelligence. And I was listening to the audiobook while I was driving, and I literally had to stop the book, because what he was talking about was like so immediate. Like I immediately got like all these ideas about how I could,
Yeah.
and so I started, like, I stopped and like got my my voice recorder out, and was like starting to figure out, like, oh, here's all the things that I need to do, and created a list for myself. So first of all, I need to go
Yeah.
back to that list. But
Yes.
yeah, second of all, now I'm feeling a whole other community of practice that might be needed around that
Definitely.
topic. So I think I'm going to have to do a little search for that. That's
I've been kind of doing a deep dive too into AI, like reading more about it, and I'm reading this book, or just finished this book called Impromptu: Amplifying the
oh,
Power of Humanity Through AI by Reid Hoffman. So, I think everybody has their take on it. Some people are unreasonably enthusiastic. and then others are like the complete opposite. But I am really curious as an entrepreneur as to like, again, like because it's hard and there's so many pieces owning a business. Like, how can I leverage it to in my business, to help me as this solopreneur at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, gosh, absolutely. I love so much. Well, I'm so looking forward to the topics that you have coming up. Like I said, I hope that when we're done here, you'll get a chance to go back and share that in the comments so that folks can find some of that and know where, like I said, know to keep their eyes out for what's coming up for you. I really am grateful that we've had the time, had the opportunity to connect, and grateful for your willingness to come and talk a little bit today about both the communities of practice that we're both part of and have had the opportunity to learn from, and excited to be able to share and look forward to learning a little bit more from what you've got from the work that you have coming up. Jackie, is there anything else that you'd like folks to know or that you'd like to share before we head out today?
No, I just want to say, Greta, thank you so much for hosting this conversation because, you know, I basically put it out there to my community of practice saying, like, hey, like, my social media person is really pushing me to do LinkedIn lives. And she's doing that because I told her, you really need to push me to tell my story. And so she kind of gave me an ultimatum. She's like, you better get your first LinkedIn live up there in the next month or else. And I'm like, oh, okay, nothing like accountability. And so anyway, I just sent an email to the community of practice that Greta and I are in together, saying, hey, anybody interested in like joining me in these conversations? And so many, it was an overwhelmingly positive response. And Greta said, how can I help? Because, I've been, recently diving into lives, and I've hosted a few conversations, and I'm happy to help you just kind of get this off the ground. And so, Greta, again, thank God for community, because I really appreciate, you offering to kind of tutor me and walk me through this process by holding my hand, like for the first one is like you just kind of like talking to me, and then my next one I'm going to be like a little birdie flying off,
So
on my
excited.
own, hopefully to kind of host them myself. So again, like, thank you so much for your help.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, you're so welcome. Like I said, I don't know where we would be in this work if we didn't have each other, and I'm far from an expert by any means, but it's like, okay, I've done one or two, I've maybe two steps. I can at least share with you the steps that I've taken, and because I've had lots of folks that have done the same for me along the way. So, whatever ways we can keep supporting each other in the work, I love that opportunity. And like I said, I love your willingness to come talk and share what you've got coming up, and I'm really looking forward to it myself. And hope that those of you who have had a chance to tune in today have it's got you thinking about communities of practice, if you're not already part of one, how they might be beneficial to you, personally, professionally, for your own development and ongoing growth. Um, and how you might begin to look for those. There's certainly paid programs out there that are something similar, but just even like the ones that we've been a part of that have been all volunteer, and really just groups of folks wanting to come together and learn one another. I think it's been an invaluable resource for me, and I'm grateful for folks like you, Jackie, who have been willing to come in and share. And like you said, that authenticity, that vulnerability, being able to share our varied experiences and lenses. And so I'm happy to be able to do this tiny little part, and really look forward to continuing to learn from you as well.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to having you on my show.
Oh, that's exciting.
Hopefully you'll say yes.
Of course, of course, of course. And I look forward to it. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Hopefully, there won't be so much time in between sessions this time. I know I've got a couple of folks coming up. I've got a follow up conversation with Victor Thomas. Victor and I have been trying to get this on the books for a couple of months, and both of our lives got a little bit crazy. So, my shout out to Victor for his persistence. So, we'll look forward to that conversation and hopefully reconnecting with my colleague Kemi as well. Jackie, thank you so much again for being here today. Everyone, if you've got any questions, would like any follow-up or ideas for conversations you'd like to have, or if you'd like to be part of a conversation with either Jackie or I going forward, please feel free to drop your interest in the comments or to message us. We'd be happy to have that conversation. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you again, Jackie. And like I said, I really look forward to seeing what's coming up and what's coming next for you. All right, everyone, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll look forward to connecting again soon.